everyone, I'm Amy from Amy Bakes Bread. You may have seen this viral reel going around on your social media channels. It's like a croissant. This is my sourdough croissant bread. It's absolutely delicious. It tastes flaky, buttery, exactly the smell and flavors and some of the similar textures of a croissant, but in a sourdough loaf. I'm going to show you how to make it right now.
Okay, it is nighttime and I am mixing up my levain for tomorrow's croissant bread. In the recipe, I have it mixed as a 1 to 10 to 10 ratio. You can change that ratio up to whatever works for you. So I've just mixed it up, and then when I wake up in the morning, it's going to be bubbly active, ready for me to mix up my dough. Pick the ratio that works for you. If you wanted to mix this the morning of, you could do that and use more flour and more water with your starter. Do a 1 to 1 to 1 ratio. Anything like that works, but you just want to mix up your starter so that you have it ripe and active, ready to go when you're ready to mix this dough up.
Okay, it's the next morning. We're back. Let me show you the starter, the levain. It's looking so good. That is ready for me to bake with. It is bubbly active, doubled in size, ready to go. If I bang it on the counter, sometimes I like to do that. See how it falls? Smells like milky sweet. Perfect. So for this croissant bread, you are going to use 120 grams of your active levain or sourdough starter. So I just dumped that in the bowl to start with. I upped this a little from my regular recipe because we're going to be keeping this dough cold. That's one of the things that's really important about this bread is the temperature. You don't want the butter to get completely melted into the dough. You kind of still want some little butter flakes. It's going to depend on the kind of butter that you use too, but you want to keep this dough at a cool temperature while it's fermenting. So I put my levain in there, and now I'm going to add my water. With sourdough recipes, the temperature of your water really impacts the temperature of your dough. So I'm using a cooler water to mix this dough because I want to keep my temperature right around 70 degrees throughout the bulk fermentation of this loaf. I also kept this, when I was developing this recipe, I kept the water content a little bit less than my regular classic sourdough loaf because I knew I was going to be adding the butter, and I wanted this to be easy for anybody to work with. So it is a little bit of a lower hydration. If you wanted to make this higher hydration, you can definitely do that. If you have a favorite sourdough recipe, you can use a lot of these techniques with that favorite recipe. I'm just kind of explaining why I did the things that I did in developing this recipe. Okay, then we're gonna add in our salt, which is 10 grams. Now I'm mixing this all together because I wanted this recipe to be a little more approachable for a beginner. And you get like some complicated, with the folds and the temperature and all of that. So I wanted to keep this part kind of simple. But if you want to autolyse, fermentalize, you can definitely do that and delay adding the salt in there. Okay, and then we're adding in our bread flour. We're doing 500 grams of bread flour. And if you go a little bit over, then I just pull some of it back out. Put it back in my bag. All right, 500 grams, and then we just mix it up. So that's the first step. I'm gonna let this, after it's mixed together, I'm going to just let it rest for about half an hour. And then we'll come back and do the first set of folds. Now I do wanna keep it still in kind of a cool place. This is a tricky part about this loaf, is really maintaining that temperature. And so if you aren't used to taking the temperature of your dough or really knowing, what the temperature of your dough is, that could be a little bit tricky or new for you. If you're used to temping your dough, then it won't be that big of a challenge. Okay, so I am just mixing this up together, and get this nice little ball of dough. I like to kind of make sure that all of the flour has been properly absorbed so you don't get any like chunks of flour in the dough. But basically, that's all you're gonna do. Now I'm gonna cover this, let it sit. I do wanna temp it really quick to just, because I wanna know what temperature is my dough. Right now, mine's actually at like 74. So I think I'm actually gonna stick this in the fridge right now for the first 30 minutes, help to bring the temperature down a little bit because I don't want it to be too warm when I add the butter in. I just pulled my dough out of the fridge. Let's temp it and see. It's been 30 minutes. Checking out the temperature. Okay, it is down now to like 68, 67, which is where I want it. My kitchen is not very warm, but I used, I guess, a warmer dough. So we're gonna do our first set of stretch and folds. Pull it up, fold it over, pull it up, fold it over, pull it up, fold it over. I do not need to put this back into my fridge now. The dough is already the temperature that I want it to be. At this point, I did my stretch and folds. I can cover it back up. If I wanted to add a little more strength to my dough right now, I could just by I kind of like to do this motion in my bowl, and that will just help to strengthen some of the gluten strands. This is the point that I kind of want to do that. You can also take your dough and slap it down and fold it over like this. This just helps to increase some of the strength in your dough. Do you have to do this? No, you don't have to, but it can help you to have a stronger dough. So I do sometimes like to, and then sometimes I skip it. Just kind of depends on what finished product you're going for. So I'm gonna cover this up now and let it ferment another 30 minutes, and then we're gonna add in the butter. While the dough is resting, I'm going to grate up the butter, and then I will keep it in the fridge or the freezer, and it will be ready when I'm ready to add it into my dough. I have tried this recipe with American butter, which has a lower fat content, and I've tried it with European butter. Both taste delicious. The American butter tends to have more of like the flakes. You can see them inside the dough. The European butter with that higher fat content tends to not melt, but soften a lot more. So that was just really cold butter from my fridge. This is an American butter. I will show you the European butter too, so you can see the difference in how it grates up. This one, the American butter, I feel like is okay to do really cold chilled from the fridge. You can also do the European butter that way, but it's a little bit messier. So if you can freeze the European butter, it's even better. I'm gonna stick this in the fridge now, or you could do the freezer to get it really nice and chilled before I add it into my dough. And here's my Kerrygold, which is kind of the European style. It has a higher percentage of fat in it. It still grates up just fine, but it is like, I can tell it's melting a lot quicker even just in my fingers. And so if you can freeze this butter, it can work a little bit better for this kind. There you go. So this is the European one. I feel like it also clings together a little bit more. I think it's just the higher butter content or fat content. It doesn't have as much water in it. So I'm gonna go ahead and chill this one as well. And I will use that one later. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. My dough has spread out a little bit. I'm going to add in half of the butter. Always like to check the temperature again with this loaf. Normally I'm not this into checking the temperature all of the time, but with this loaf especially, I am. So I'm gonna add half of the butter just right on top of the loaf. Not the loaf, the dough. And then we're just gonna stretch and fold it in. The butter, because it's been chilled, will bring down the temperature a little bit of this dough. So you may be wondering why this actually works, because you might be thinking, oh, I thought that you had to have really warm dough for the fermentation to work. Well, it can work at lower temperatures, and that's what we're banking on with this loaf, is that the fermentation will work, but we need to see a larger rise from the dough as it ferments. So you really want to keep it around that 70 degrees. So it will still ferment, but it will just take a lot longer. And that's why we added in more starter or levain into this dough than a traditional loaf, to give it a little boost to help it to rise a little bit more. So that's the first inclusion of butter. I'm gonna put this, rest the butter back in the fridge, and then in about 30 minutes, we will add the second inclusion of butter. Oh, let me take the temperature and see if that brought it down a little bit. It did. Brought it down about 1 degree or so. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get it back up to, we want it to be 70 right now. Mine's about 66 with that. So I'm gonna let it sit and be okay, but once all the butter has been included, I will try to get it up to 70. I may use my bread proofer, I'll put it in a warmer place, and I just kind of have to manage that temperature. That really is the trickiest part of this loaf, is managing the temperature, making sure you get a rise out of it before you shape it. All right, it's time to add in the last bit of butter. Now, remember if you're using European butter, I think it's kind of better to do it frozen. This was just chilled and it falls apart better than the European butter. It comes apart better. So you're just gonna do a stretch and fold to keep that butter nice and flaky in the dough. And then we're just going to let it rise. So I'm gonna check the temperature. I'm gonna check the temperature one more time. It's about 68 is what it is. So I want it to maybe come up another 2 degrees as it's rising, but we want to see this rise quite a bit in the bowl. That's what we're gonna be looking for. Probably over like 6 to 7 hours, maybe even a little bit longer, depending on how long it will take to rise. So I'll come back. So we finished adding the butter into the dough. We're gonna do one more set of stretch and folds before we let this rise. And we're gonna let this rise eventually. So it's about 70% risen and filling a lot of this bowl. We need to see that rise for it to be fermented well enough to be able to bake it. So we'll come back in 30 minutes. Last set of stretch and folds. See how that dough and the butter is just chunks all throughout? That's kind of what you're looking for, especially if you're using the American style of butter. The European style will spread a little bit more. Still both good. Good option. Here's the European style, so you can see how it spreads a little more. It's okay, you still just want to keep it at right in that like 70 degree range. And it just laminates all throughout. We're gonna let this rise. We're looking for probably a 70% rise. I'm gonna come back here in the evening when my kids are back home from school and we'll check it out then. Hey, back from all the school stuff. Look how much that's risen. It looks beautiful. See, notice some bubbles around the side. It's dough mean. It has risen probably about that extra 70%. It feels aerated, light. Pulling it out, and then we're just going to pre-shape it just how you would a normal sourdough loaf, into a circle. If a little butter comes, I just add it back in there. We're gonna let it sit here for about half an hour. It will flatten out a little bit, and then we will shape it up and stick it in our banneton. Okay, this has flattened out a little bit, and I need to get it shaped. So This is how I shape. There's lots of different ways to shape. You just shape it how you like to shape yours. It is time to bake this loaf. I just dumped this out. I did a really simple score, just 1, 2. You don't need any big scoring on this loaf. Look at the little buttery flakes in here. You want this to still be nice and chilled, and definitely use parchment paper underneath, because if a little bit of butter leaks out during the baking process, you don't want it to make a mess in your oven. Now I've had my oven preheating with the Dutch oven in it. I'm gonna pull the Dutch oven out and we're gonna bake this loaf. It's always the moment of truth. It smells so good though. It does. It smells like a croissant. Gorgeous. Here we go. Oh man, gorgeous. Checking the temperature really fast. Okay, it is, yeah, it's done. Gorgeous. You'll notice, let me see. There's just a little bit of butter in the bottom, almost none in this loaf. That means it's pretty well fermented and proved. If you get a lot of butter leaking, then it probably is underproofed and you needed to let it go longer. I'm gonna pull this out and let it cool on a cooling rack. That is gorgeous. Look at those buttery lines. Okay, so gonna let this cool and then I'll cut into it in a little bit and show you the inside.